a model of using wisdom to contemplate a metaphor. I will relate the story of someone who exemplifies using wisdom to contemplate a metaphor so that you can better picture it. The Buddha provided many examples in the discourses, but to write about all of them would make this book too thick. I will only highlight a few stories to demonstrate this concept. During the era of the Buddha Kassapa, there was a girl whose foundational nature was one of cultivating the wisdom perfection, Paññā Bārami. She habitually used wisdom to reflect on death. She contemplated how death would occur to her. She contemplated how death would occur to other people and animals. She contemplated how death had already occurred to other people and animals. And she contemplated how humans and animals that were alive would die in the future. It was her nature to contemplate in this way, and she did it in all of the 4 postures. Whether she was standing, walking, sitting, reclining, or working, she would use mindful wisdom to constantly reflect. Once people are born, they exist momentarily, and then die and separate from one another. Upon death, none of the money, gold, riches, and worldly possessions can help in any way. These treasures cannot be taken along with them at all. All of those belongings will be inherited by their children and grandchildren. And once those children and grandchildren die, the possessions will continue to fall into the hands of subsequent generations. No one can claim ownership of the world's material objects, watu tatu, because they are merely possessions to be temporarily relied on while alive. The girl used wisdom to train her mind every day and night. Her mind experienced a disillusioning awakening about how tedious and repetitive birth and death were not worth the daily suffering. The more she used wisdom to reflect on death, the more she understood and realized the insignificance of the physical form. Her mind did not cling or bind to anything. After she died, she savored bliss in a heavenly realm. When her accumulated merit, punya, and wholesomeness, kusala, had been depleted, she was reborn as a human. In that human rebirth, she was born to a family of weavers during the era in which our current Buddha was still alive. One day, the Buddha descended to the Hall of Truth to preach the Dhamma. Ordinarily, once he was seated at the pulpit, Dhammasana, he would begin his sermon. That time, however, he remained silent because the girl was not finished with spooling thread. Once she had completed the task, she carried the basket of spools and walked by the Hall of Truth. She saw a great mass of people sitting in silence and sat down to see why they were doing so. She did not have any intention of listening to the Dhamma, but only listened to the Dhamma by chance. Once she was seated, the Buddha immediately began his discourse. The topic he selected to serve as a model of the Dhamma was that of the end of life. Nothing can be maintained in a particular state forever. Following birth, there is temporary existence and then ultimately death. The Buddha drew an analogy to a spool of thread. When used in weaving, the thread on the spool will eventually run out. Likewise, the lives of humans and animals arise, momentarily exist, and eventually end. The 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire will all disintegrate back into their original elements. Upon hearing the Buddha's Dhamma sermon on the spool of thread as an analogy for the end of life, she understood and employed wisdom to contemplate the spool of thread. She internalized Opanayiko, the spool of thread, and drew parallels to her own life in order to see how they were subject to common characteristics. They were unsustainable states. Every part of the body that is supposed to be the self can only be so momentarily. Ultimately, it will cease to be and disintegrate, as nothing can exist forever. Once she understood this truth about reality, wisdom had arisen. Her foundational nature of using wisdom to contemplate death from past lives was triggered and linked up with her newfound wisdom. The wisdom she had previously cultivated fused with the new. She then awakened to the truth of reality, that everything that arises must ultimately die. Nothing can exist forever. Upon knowing and seeing this with wisdom, she awakened to the Dhamma as an Aryapukala of the Sotapanna level. May you all understand the methods of Dhamma practice during the Buddha's era in order to discern whether or not your current individual techniques correspond. Change your views so that they are sammaditthi, or views that are correct and righteous and correspond to the 3 common characteristics of impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and not self, anatta. With samadhi, views are correct and aligned with the truth of reality. This is precisely when wisdom has arisen within you. It is not that wisdom will arise once the mind, citta, achieves meditative calm. This kind of view or notion is nowhere to be found in the Buddha's teachings. So why is this being taught and followed? If it is in fact true, can you point to a human testament from the Buddha's era? I have extensively studied the historical accounts of Aryapugalas, and there does not exist a single person who sat in meditative serenity and experienced wisdom arising. The accounts of Aryapugalas from the Buddha's era should be studied. That way, you will understand and change your wrong views to right views. I dare state this and write this because I have researched the history of Aryapugalas in the Buddha's era. I am ready to answer any questions and address any doubts that you may have. If you are truly secure and confident, do not go behind my back and allege that my words and books are incorrect. Instead, draw from the historical accounts of Aryapugalas in the Buddha's era and discuss them with me. Show me the human testaments. I have stated and written this because I already have human testaments. That is why I dare to say it and inscribe it into a book for people to read. I do not have the audacity to change the Pali Canon, Tipitaka. I only want people to correctly understand the meaning of the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is already perfect, but those who have interpreted, explained, and expanded upon many parts of it lack rationality. This is embodied in the statement, once you sit in meditation and the mind, citta, becomes calm, wisdom will arise. What is this? Why is it being taught and practiced? During the Buddha's time, he never taught this to the Buddhist company. Why have people in this era written about these methods and taught them to the masses? These misconceptions have infected so many people. According to the Noble Eightfold Path, wisdom does not result from serene meditation in any way. Serene meditation is a path that leads to supernormal powers, apiññā, as well as the 4 fine material absorptions, rupa jhana, and the 4 immaterial absorptions, arupa jhana, which combine to form the 8 levels of meditative attainment, samapatti. Sages and ascetics practiced these methods prior to the advent of Buddhism. None of those sages or ascetics experienced wisdom arising from tranquil meditation in any way. Even the Buddha had once trained in this way, but he discerned that it was not the method that would lead to release from suffering. That is precisely why he departed from the 2 ascetics. The Buddha explicitly stated that serene meditation was not aligned with deliverance from defilements, kilesa, and desires, tanha, nor did it lead to the path and fruit of enlightenment. It was merely a way to temporarily suppress defilements and desires.